I think the time to start has come. Let me welcome one and all then to this special occasion, the official launch of Why Are You Looking at Me by Jean du Plessis, a book that's been out for a few months, but I think really deserves a proper launch. So that is what we're doing. There are nearly 100 of us present, or there will be nearly 100 of us present from all corners of the globe, colleagues, friends, family, as well as some members of the media and publishing community. Most of us from South Africa, of course, but also Germany, Norway, the US, Nepal, and beyond. I note especially our big contingent from Kenya. It's so good to have such a great and friendly turnout. My name is David Schmidt, and I am the program director tonight. I am a longtime friend of Jean. Many years ago, he gave me a gift, a beautifully printed booklet with quite a number of the pictures that now grace the book that we are launching. Maybe the book had its origins in that act of generosity. The agenda this evening is straightforward. After the intro, we move into a conversation with Jean, led by Zubaydah Jaffer. This will last about 30 minutes, and we've then invited 4 discussants who will share a chosen poem or extract from the book and reflect briefly on it for 3 to 4 minutes each. We will introduce our interviewer and discussants as we proceed. We will then do a brief conclusion, and we'll be done by about 7:30 South African time at the latest. For those of you who have not got a copy of the book or want more copies, details about how to purchase it will be provided at the end. For reasons of time and the number of people attending, we'll not be able to take any audio comments from attendees, and we will keep you muted for the bulk of proceedings. However, we would appreciate participation via the chat facility. So leave your feedback and your comments. There has been some amazing feedback, which we'd like to continue to hear, and this will be an important record. Also ask any questions. We promised to respond at least post our launch. I also note for transparency that we are recording the proceedings. But to start, we thought we would invite everyone for the next 1 minute to put on their videos and mics and to say a big collective simultaneous hi, hello. We will also just take a screenshot of the whole gathering as a memento. So let's all switch on our mics and our videos.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
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 Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Hi.
I'm sick of fame.
Hi, Marion.
Wonderful. Does that do it as a collective hi? I think it does. Thanks, everyone. I think proceedings are now indeed properly launched. And we're now ready to move to our next session, which is the interview. I'm assuming, first of all, that in fact most of us know Jean. And I think the interview and the book will reveal some of his many dimensions. So I'm not going to do an introduction to him beyond the banal prose of that media release and invitation. For those of you who don't know, Jean du Plessis works for UN Habitat in Nairobi as a land specialist. He has previously worked for global and local human rights organizations and is a senior official in South Africa. But the conversation and the book obviously tell us so much more. Our interviewer this evening is Zubaida Jaffer. We are thrilled that Zubaida has agreed to lead the conversation. Zubaida is a journalist, an author, an activist. Last year, she was awarded the prestigious Alan Kirkland Soga Lifetime Achievement Award, which recognizes sustained and extraordinary contributions to journalism. Zubaida recently launched her own publishing company, Number 10 Publishing, and republished 3 of her wonderful and important books, Our Generation, Love in the Time of Treason, and Beauty of the Heart. Zubaida, it is so wonderful that you could join us, and I now hand over to you to lead the conversation with Jean. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Is all the sound and everything on, David?
We can hear you.
You can hear me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jean, I see you are beautifully framed against a beautiful background. So lovely to see you and to be in conversation with you. You know, a few weeks ago when David handed me this book of yours, I did not know you. And so I thought to myself, oh, well, David is a good friend of mine. He's excited about the book, so let me have a look. But I was doing it more out of a sense of duty than anything else, David. And so I found some time and I started paging through it, and I looked at the text and the beautiful photographs. And I was actually deeply touched because I suddenly got a glimpse of you, because the book suggested to me that this was a memoir, not a complete memoir, a sliver of your life, but a memoir nevertheless. It wasn't a record of your work, but it was a record of your life and the sensitivity with which you engaged with the world around you. And I immediately thought to myself, I hope that I will meet Jean. I hope that one day I will meet Jean. Of course, we've only met a few days ago virtually, but Jean, I already feel that I know so much about you through the book. Because, you know, I'm always very fascinated when I sense that people have been able to, or somebody has been able to go beyond the confines of imposed identities and to be a citizen of the world. And your book and the photographs and the text, you know, the words just really tell me what a, you know, human being you are, beyond the labels, beyond all the difficulties that is a very sort of dominant challenge in the world today. And it is that challenge, it's that, you know, I'm getting a little bit emotional because it's such a deep matter for all of us. It's such a deep matter, and it's such a matter that it's so, should one say, tragic almost, that we can't see and we can't look and we can't connect with the people around us fully. And your photographs connect with people all around the world. And so for that, I want to thank you very much. And even though I don't know, I didn't quite get all that David said about the habitat and the, all the labels and the titles, but I do have a sense of you as a fellow citizen of the world and a human being. So it gives me great pleasure to be here tonight and to launch this book. And to say to you that perhaps there are others also, I don't know how many others in the room that perhaps don't know as much about you as David and some of the other participants, and also that also need some kind of sense of how you came to this point in your life. So I thought perhaps we could start off by asking you just to share, some of the twists and turns of your life with everybody, so that we could get a sense of what brought you to this point of publishing this book. So over to you, Jean.
It's difficult to follow on from the words you've just said, Zubaida. Pity that lunch was virtual and not in person, and we could have had more time talking. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I'm seeing names here of people I hold in very, very high esteem and who actually were part of that journey. So that's good. It was never meant to be a book. I've done a number of books, one called Losing Your Home, one called Count Me In, that I've been primary author for. This was not the plan. Let me first just talk about how this happened, and then about my journey that it was part of. I have a distress at what's happening to words and images in the world right now. I think we have a pandemic of faking of truth and meaning all over, and it happens with images, and it happens with words, and it happens with a combination between them. And so it was a bit of through distress that I tried to refine the images that made sense and put words to them. Now, the journey started, I'm a white boy born in Port Elizabeth in 1961 to very wonderful, very well-off parents in Warmer, and that was the beginning of it all. Very big family, and destined to become, I suppose, another official or whatever in the system we had at the time. It didn't turn out quite like that, and to jump from there to Stellenbosch in the 1980s, which was actually, for anyone who didn't think like everyone else in Stellenbosch, a very exciting time, because you were breaking rules all the time, and you couldn't move without breaking a rule. And I suppose, the years there, I'm very grateful that I was there, and for example, not in UCT. I was an Afrikaans, anglicized Afrikaans young man in Stellenbosch, a very good environment to be in. So just to run myself geographically, if you like, refusing to do military service, I ended up eventually in what they called the Republic of Transkei. Wrote to their SADF and said, I'm in the Republic of Transkei, I can't report for duty. And they said, well, let us know when you're back in the Republic of South Africa, which was a nice, wonderful irony. And of course, some of the border posts didn't even have people on them. So one was still, that got me, that time got me at one point staying on a Catholic mission station, an area around Queen's Mercy, where I got to know ordinary people, and the land issue became very, very big for me there. And that was also where I met, and I see him, he's here, which is extraordinary, is Guy Tillum, who is a master of photography and is for me one of the best they've ever been. And he shared a house with us, and we turned the milk room into a dark room. So images become important in the way that Guy related to people, taking the camera out after 4 or 5 days, 10 days there, rather than just pointing and pressing. And he put me in my place very well in terms of the journey that it would be and the importance of images. Stellenbosch, jumped to Pietermaritzburg, working for Association for Rural Advancement. Again, working with learning from communities resisting eviction, then Department of Land Affairs in Pretoria, where I was for, I think, 5 years, the head of the restitution program. Ended up in East Timor, back in Pretoria, back in Pietermaritzburg, then in Geneva. It's been a lot of jumps. And I think that is why I've been in these places, all of them that are in the book, Zubeida. And I don't just want to be in a place, I want to engage with it. I want to find meaning there. And in fact, most of the images happened at the off moment when I'm just wandering around and trying to see and engage. I hope that answers it for you. Currently, I'm in Kenya. It's a place where I would encourage everyone to visit at some point because of the energy that's there and the mixture, the heady mixture of legal, illegal, and extra legal energy that goes into being African. So I've learned some lessons there too. I hope that was not too long an answer to your question.
Jean, no, I felt a bit that maybe I was a bit unfair because I asked you such a broad question that required for you to chatter for a while. So let me be a little bit more specific before we move on to the book. What would you say were one or two of the sort of formative experiences in your life? Just one or two. Obviously Stellenbosch, you explained that, but were there any other, anything that pops up that really shook you and that will help us understand, were you just born this way? Did you just come out this way, that you were able to, that you were sensitive and that you were, you could find, you had the eye to see certain things? Or do you feel that something pushed you? Was there something that pushed you, propelled you? What was it that made you pick up the camera and sort of do all these photographs? Or was it just, was it, before we come to the technical side, but what about in your life drove you to this activity?
I think one of the most formative parts of my life was being told that I would have to carry a gun and shoot people to defend something that was clearly not defensible. And it was, my one brother died by his own hand with a gun, and guns were never for me the answer to anything. So if you want a formative experience, I think, and that drove us as young men and our female friends and comrades, it was a big issue. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. There was this call up that had to happen. So I think that drove the first decade. And I don't think parts of it, I was not a very nice person. You had to make very difficult decisions and so on. But I think that put me on the journey, and that has been a line through my whole life. The other one was the time in KwaZulu-Natal, under the trees, listening to people explain their story, and trying to work out what do I do. Later on, flying into East Timor, for example, I never came into a place believing I would solve their problems. It was always a question of what on earth can one do here? What is my role here? And I think the whole book is about that. I knew as I landed in Timor, and I knew when I would drive to Ganahook Farm, I'm going to be the one learning here. And under those trees are on this farm, and that's a long story I won't go into, but I'll just say one thing to you, is every meeting started with an old woman telling the story again of how the community got there and what happened to them. Every time. That was the beginning, You've got lawyers, you've got, people who've come in cars, you've got all the important men sitting around, and that story would be told again and again. And I suppose it was part of how do you represent that somehow when that's not you and that's not your role, and reaching across that, trying to get meaning across somehow, and yeah, it's no more eloquent or smart than that. I think that is essential. And we learned, Jean du Plessis, who was our political philosophy lecturer, always reminded us of the unexamined life is not worth living, the Socratic statement. And I think every bumper sticker, every car should have a bumper sticker on saying that. And I think that was also a huge moment for me, was learning that lesson that you need to examine.
It is so interesting, because that moment that you talk about with a woman near the Drakensberg, and telling her story and starting a story with explaining or giving an explanation of what had taken place, that's the story, the words that you describe that resonated most with me. It resonated most with me because I suppose I'm very interested in history, and I'm also very interested in the pain that we carry in this country. And I'm also deeply concerned that often we cannot seem to find a way of acknowledging how deep all of this is. And we especially now when we are faced with such a difficult moment, both in terms of the pandemic, but in terms of the crisis in the country and the disintegration of our long-held beliefs and our commitment to see improvement in the lives of people around us. So it's a very difficult time, but it is a time that we have to get back to the basics, that we have to see those around us, and we have to respect. We can't just say, this young boy who tells you with his eyes, "Why are you looking at me?" Yes, we all of us as artists, as writers, as development agents, as government officials, whatever, we have to obviously, reflect and ask ourselves what we are doing and how we are relating to everybody around us, with a sense that we have to find equilibrium and equality. It's not an easy thing, but perhaps we can move off a little bit, Jean, your sort of life, and talk a bit about the actual project. And if you could perhaps share with us how you experienced it, what was the process, and how did the photographs and the text come together as they did?
I'm just actually reflecting on what you were saying, because I think one of the things I've learned, and then also working with David on this, was show, don't tell, right? Don't explain, born to explain, just forget about that. And it was a life lesson. It really spoke to me because of this thing that anyone who pretends to have the answer is wrong, really. It has to be a combination of people and things to fix what we have to fix. And images are interesting with that, because images and what Guy taught me was, you're not going to get what's outside the frame in the frame. You feel amazing. The sky is clear. It's been a wonderful day. The sunset is all over there, but you've just got this little place to put the image, which is an extraordinary discipline, really. And for me, I wrote down a statement because I was speaking to someone else the other day that for me, photography is an unsteady duel between decisiveness and uncertainty. You know, that the image gets captured, but which is the certainty, but the decisiveness, but the uncertainty is always there. What does it mean? You know, and there are great photographers who can create an image that will always be an image that speaks to just about everyone and have that meaning. Whereas our photographs, you think it's amazing, and then you see it and it's not really so good. And I could not go off and be a photographer in the way that others did. But for me, it was more about the combination between the words and the image and bringing them together, which was a big challenge. And so what I tried to do is, I mean, in distress because of what's happening. I mean, you take how many photographs now, and you can't find them. They're in folders somewhere. And what do? So I forced myself to go and find the images that meant something to me. And there were, in the end, there were about 80 of them on the wall. And I happened to have David and Claire in the same room in Nairobi with all these pictures. And it was fantastic discussion because the one said, what is the line? What is the story here? Exactly what you're asking. The other one said, you know, just go picture by picture. And it was a huge challenge. And so what earlier on, David had reminded me of the so-called 6-word story of supposedly Hemingway minted, but he didn't. But you can say, you know, if you say, for sale, baby shoes never worn, there's a story inside that, big story, you know, so you only need a few words. And so what I developed was a device whereby if I couldn't define the essence of the photograph in 6 words, then it would not make it to the book. And I cried real tears about some photographs who they just weren't 6 words. And you'll see that there's 6-word heading on each of these because I tried to find that definition of the meaning of it, and also the title of the book. Now my brain is such that I think in 6-word sentences, so that can also be a trap. But that was the device that I then used, and then got down to 30 photographs, and then I tried to put words to underneath that kind of thing, where the image and the words come together to represent meaning in a place where I was.
So you mean to say you didn't choose the photographs? You didn't say, okay, these are the photographs that I most favor. You just selected them on the basis of the 6 words.
Well, there were 80 photographs on the wall, of which 30 survived. So initially, I just went through and found the ones that represented places that changed me, you know, moments that changed me. And then I know I'm not the world's best photographer. I know I can't just put them in a book and people will be interested. So then it was, well, what is it that makes this interesting? And then I actually thought, in the end, I thought, this is a better way to work with a picture for me, is to combine them. And that's how, and David kept on calling them poems. I still don't know whether they're poems, but then that's then how the story underneath the image. There's some photographs I could show you that I could. What was the one where eventually the words where they promised us Mary would come, you know, and it was just so bizarre. And the photograph was out. I mean, David also wanted it in, but we couldn't put it in because there was no story there. There was no moment there standing in Stockholm with these 2 guys with umbrellas in the rain, with the rainbow and the whatever, with the pants wet, looking like bankers. There was no story, and so I couldn't actually put it in. So that was the device I used to work down from thousands of images down to 30.
And you also you know, must have met, well, I don't know if you met, some of the photographs it shows you sitting with people or you're there. It's quite clear that you're engaging with them, but you traveled all over, or to many places, and you took these photographs. who would you say, is it all the pictures in the book? Are those the people that, well, obviously those people were important to you, but who would you say are, the one or two individuals or groups of people that impacted most on your memory?
I mean, the one that obviously comes, a few come to mind. I mean, the young man in Timor, the picture, hey, Mr. Photo, there he stood. That was an extraordinary moment, because you arrive in a country where almost half of a city has been burned down by a departing militia. The UN arrives to try and help stabilize the situation. People are devastated. The Indonesian, occupying Indonesians have left. Everybody just about that you passed, if they saw a camera, said, hey, Mr. Photo. Everyone wanted their photograph taken. And the history of that was journalists some were killed, they were banned, they weren't allowed to be shown, as people. The truth of what was happening couldn't get out into the world. And so for that first year there was sort of a frenzy of see us, we are here. And I passed, I was driving in a UN vehicle, and I passed an interesting mural with Che Guevara and Donald Duck to the left and whatever. And I went and I took pictures of it, this burnt out house. And as I was getting back in the vehicle, I heard the guy say, hey, Mr. Photo. And he called me and he composed the photograph. It was extraordinary. I mean, he looked, I think he's wearing a Jackie Chan shirt or whatever. So there were faces everywhere, but he absolutely composed it. And the moment I took the picture, he just gave me a thumbs up and he walked away. He was gone, so that for me was an enormous lesson, because there's ethics in taking pictures. You can't just point cameras at people. I mean, I don't mind taking pictures of people doing bad things and putting that up, but for the rest, I want people's permission to do that. So he really influenced me. And the other one must be Maurice Johnson sitting on the park bench, on the bench in Washington, where he engaged with me in a way that also changed my life. But I think we'll talk about that a bit more later.
Tell me how, we are going to be looking more closely at the photographs. I'm not going to touch on that now, but how did you, in your journey, in your life's journey, I'm interested to know, you weren't a journalist or photographer for that matter. So what was your relationship with the camera? I mean, you said now you got out of this vehicle, the UN, so you were carrying your camera. Were you carrying the camera with you all the time, wherever you were? Did you have it at hand? And so when you saw something, or did you separate what you were doing, your sort of paid work, from this other process? I'm quite fascinated, because I've always found it difficult as a journalist. I remember going to Rwanda shortly after the genocide and covering that story. And I took photographs, and of course, I did radio, I did interviews, and I did print eventually. But it wasn't that easy, because it's different media, and so to do all of that, it's not that easy, because photography, as you said, and I mean, we have Guy with us who's the maestro, should we say. It's a very specialized, job, artistic expression. But it is also, it's a job. So how did you connect your paid work with this activity? How did you separate it?
If we were to look, and I don't know if Anna can put it up, but if we were to look at the photograph inside that humble little restaurant in Kenya, which the caption relates to, took us 7 years to be outside yet inside. outside, be it in or whatever. People, you know, I can't see it now.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an interesting day, and it may answer your question. I mean, it's easier these days because the cameras are so good in anything from an iPhone 6 upwards and so on. You know, when you're carrying the big thing. And again, sorry, Guy, to mention you, and I can't believe you're here, but you need to be close. You really need to be inside. You don't need to be close physically necessarily, but you need to somehow be part of the place where you are, yeah, there it's up. Thank you, Anna. Where you are somehow accepted. And on this day, we've been riding forever. I mean, everyone, you can see that man sitting there staring at me. He rode for the British military at one point. He rode for them. He's a very fit individual. We are tired. And during that journey, twice we'd encountered children following us on the bicycles. And I had asked, because I asked kids whether we could take pictures in that particular area. Twice kids said, no, we won't take the photo. I can't take the photograph. What happened here is we entered a restaurant, and this was now our space. We were paying customers, and it took them a good 10 minutes to come through that muslin curtain and join us. And for me, it was an extraordinary feeling. This is now my space, thank you very much. You've come in, I'm taking the photograph. But look how relaxed that young boy is, who's like leaning against, I mean, they are there, you know, they've come in. And I think what I'm saying to you is it's different for different situations. You know, you have to measure it as you go. I now always have a phone with me, so I have a camera, but I wouldn't always walk around with a camera, yeah.
And
I could talk about this for hours, and I'm not going to.
I'm sure.
Very good question.
I can see you can talk about it for hours, and maybe when the pandemic eases, we will finally have that opportunity to meet, and then maybe we will talk for hours. I mean, especially if David is around, we'll be talking for hours with some good food, hopefully. You told me when we spoke virtually that you did this exercise, or you put this all together for yourself, and I assume for those closest to you. And I said to you that I was very fortunate when I did my first book, that I told myself that I'm doing this for myself and my family. And so I didn't have any expectations beyond that. And that's I often advise people who are writing, say to them, don't have any expectations, because when you put those sorts of expectations on you, it's an enormous pressure. You know, is it going to be published? Will somebody publish it? You know, that kind of thing. And if you remove that and you're doing it, you know, from your heart and for the love of it, then it doesn't really matter. You know, you're doing something for the record. You're doing something for those closest to you whom you love. But now tonight, you know, you've got a whole army of people here in this gathering, and I'm sure if it had been physical, there could have even been more people. What would you, as we conclude this discussion, what would you say you would like them, all of us, to take away with us? You know, what would you feel you would like us to be left with from this experience? Because we're experiencing you. Maybe it's an unfair question, but is there perhaps a specific hope that you have, or is there a feeling that you have that you'd like to share with us?
I spoke of my absolute distress at what's happening to words and to images, you know, and how what we thought would liberate us in the form of media being accessible to everyone and being everywhere. Just again and again, we realize the trick is on us, and that these things get manipulated, and words, to the extent what happened the other day, you have someone who is skeptical of vaccination and then leaves the vaccines out of the fridge so that they fail, so that he can prove that it gets proven that that's their thing. I mean, the whole relationship with the idea of truth has been relativized, and images are playing a bigger role in that than we think, and words are. And now it's just people's own truths, everyone's truth is relevant, rather than us being in a joint pursuit for truth and meaning. And so, you know, for me, the wish, and I don't have the answer, and I think pondering on these questions and situations was more, what was going on there? What was happening there? And David's extraordinary coaching of try to say it in a way where you are showing it and not telling it, you're not explaining it. And for me, that's a wonderful key into being humble and to learn what is the meaning of situations, instead of having this idea of, oh dear, this is terrible, I have to come and fix it. Try and work out maybe where your position is in trying to fix it, and then do that rather than just saying it or putting it online, as it were. And for me, I don't think it will always be a mixture of photography and words. It's in all aspects of life where we are just so bad now at communicating in ways that can bring about change and pursue truth, right from wrong, understanding where the moral compass is of what is right and what is wrong. And that's a very difficult, and that's a lifelong challenge we have. And hopefully, I mean, and just to get then quickly to the book, it was never meant as a book to be published. The first print run was 25, which I counted my friends, my family and my immediate circle of friends. Then I got responses from 3 or 4 people that made me think, not this is going to be a bestseller, but there's a broader community that wants to see this. Unfortunately, if you want to show photographs, you need a certain gram of paper, you need proper design, you need really good printing. It's not cheap. And then there was a print run of 100, you know, and maybe there'll be more. It's not going to be a bestseller, but it's about finding the community that's interested in this way of relating to words and images, and maybe this can spur them on to a similar journey.
Now, at the beginning, I'd said that the book suggested to me a memoir. It suggested to me, it told me about you. It told me about your life. It told me about your sensitivity to the world. Now, these are 30 photographs, and there are another 50 somewhere. Are you going to find a way to share those with us? I mean, in today's world, we have the internet, we have all sorts of possibilities. Can you and David get working again? And perhaps, you know, not necessarily put poems, whatever David calls them, poems, prose, to each photograph, but maybe 6 words. And we can actually follow your journey. Maybe it could be year by year, I'm not sure, but in some kind of way. Would you consider that?
There are people in the room here who've asked the same thing and given me different forms of advice. It's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, I hear one jumps from Twitter to whatever, to Instagram, a whole lot of things I'm not even on. I even struggle to find more than 60 people on Facebook who are interested. I don't know the answer. I really don't. I think an exhibition would be great and be fun. And in fact, there was years ago an idea of exhibiting 10 pictures at the Tatham Gallery in Pietermaritzburg. And maybe one day I'll get back there and do that. I don't know the answer to the question. I'm just very glad this volume exists, because now that's done. It's there, it's accessible, and it's a start. And it's taught me a different way of writing, because I do tons of writing all the time, and it's taught me a way of writing as a lens with images that I think I'll carry on with. As with all your questions that you've asked so far, Zubaida, I don't know the answer to any of them.
That's very good that we end on that note, Jean, because it kind of captures, our lives at the moment. We don't know anything. I think you said earlier on, and I also want to repeat, that anybody who suggests that they have the answers to all the difficulties or the challenges that we're living through, they are being dishonest, because as you said, there isn't anyone with, a straightforward answer. We need to combine. And so I hope in the coming months and, in the immediate years, that we will understand that none of us are so important and so, having all the answers. We have to reach out to one another across in our diversity and find solutions together. But I must thank you very much, Jean. This was a delight, and I hope that we will have an opportunity. In fact, maybe in a year's time, you could get us all together in Kenya or something. Imagine we have the exhibition in Kenya and we visit and meet all those lovely friends of yours. That would be delightful. But thank you very much. And thank you, David, wherever you might be. You seem to have disappeared. So thank you so much.
And you. Thanks, Zubaida. Thanks, everybody. David, are you with us still?
Where's
You're
David?
muted.
I'm unmuted and okay. I've started my video again.
Good.
Jean and Zubaida, thanks so much for that wonderful conversation. I think it really illuminated lots and lots of things, and really thanks so much for that. But that is not all. We now have 4 discussants who have selected one of the pictures and the poem that goes with it, or an extract from the book, and they now are going to put up the picture. We're going to read the poem or extract, and then the discussant will reflect for a couple of minutes just on what that particular image and set of words meant to them. And so first up, our first discussant is Julia Martin. Julia is a professor of English at the University of the Western Cape, a wonderful teacher, a writer, and notable recent books of hers are the Blackridge House, a memoir, fab book, and A Millimeter of Dust. Julia's known Jean and Jean's partner, the wonderful Claire Verbeek, for a long time. And without further ado, I hand over to you, Julia.
I don't seem to be able to start my video. I think it says the host has stopped it. Can you get me going, Claire? I mean, Anna?
Sorry, Julia, I'm on it now.
Okay. I will be there in a moment. Yes. Start your video, start my video. Here I am. Okay. Why are you looking at me? Jean's book is about looking, how we see other people and why, and how in particular we look at the people and places we meet when we travel. Why, how, what for? As we know, a question is often more productive than an answer. So the collection resides with this question through a range of images and little poems, while refusing to settle on a single answer. That is the always present question that arises as soon as we pick up a camera to frame the beauty, tragedy, weirdness, courage, irony, resilience, and so on that we perceive in other lives. How can I do this thing, look at you and make a picture of you, without turning you into an object? How can I frame this glimpse of your life without putting a frame around you? For Jean, I think the question goes even further. How can I use my camera, my globalized access to travel, to put you at the center? Could it ever be possible to use all this great tech and education and privilege to step aside and really hear what you have to say? So that's why I made this choice. And Jean, it's great to hear that this is an important one for you too. It's a great photograph to begin with. I mean, look at that expression. Close up, in mid-speech. He's saying something emphatically with more than just his words. His whole face is engaged. It's the face of a person whose ancestors were African. But unlike many of Jean's subjects, he's not in Kenya or South Africa or Uganda or anywhere else but Washington, D.C. on New York Avenue. Look at that wide street in the background. Look at those pictures, those buildings. Look at the unchallengeable authority of those classic lines, the modern glass facades. Such concrete power cemented in. Once we read the accompanying text, we learn his name, Maurice Johnson. It's a cold day, early spring, and Maurice is living on a bench outside those big buildings, just a few steps away from the heart of it all, the nerve center of the free world. Jean's description of the encounter is sensitive and subtle, understated. And somehow in a few lines, he simply reverses the assumed relationship between himself and the other man. Here's what he says. Please, sir, can you help me? Would the cherry blossoms survive the unexpected cold snap, the newspapers asked. I passed 3 benches piled with cloth and plastic. One growled at me, God damn it, God damn it. Then this urgent question followed by money for a cup of coffee. I joined him and said, no, sir, it is you who can help me. Tell me, please tell me everything. Money for a cup of coffee, he says, means entry to McDonald's. As long as some remains in your cup and you sit upright, you may stay. Sleeping upright now, there's an essential survival skill. His name was Maurice Johnson. His bench was on New York Avenue, Washington, D.C., half a mile from Barack Obama's desk. For me, this meeting with Maurice speaks beautifully to Jean's whole project in the book, his compassion and his capacity for seeing and for listening. Yes, he says each time, I am looking at you. And with your permission, I'm even taking a photograph. But no, sir, it is you who can help me. Tell me, please, tell me everything. That's it.
Thanks so very much, Julia. That was very powerful and beautiful. Thanks. Next up, we have Jonathan Anser. Jonathan is a journalist, author, podcaster, and media trainer. Recent books of his include The Spy, The Uncovering of Craig Williamson, and Betrayal, The Secret Lives of Apartheid Spies. And amongst other things, he is Jean's most consistent riding partner in Cape Town. Hi, Jonathan, welcome.
Hi, David. Thank you very much. I just want to say that when Jean and I cycled together, we used to cycle on Table Mountain before it got burnt down. And we would both take photographs of the very same thing. And mine was just a kind of a blur. And Jean's was this beautiful, exquisite. He just managed to capture the moment. And I just don't understand, how that can be. We photographing the same thing, and yet Jean's is so good. Anyway, I chose this photograph to talk about. Before I read the text, because when I first saw the photograph, I didn't see the text. And when I saw this photograph, I drew a sharp intake of breath, because it's such a beautiful image. Golden sunrise, sky, ripples of water, mountain in the distance. In the left corner, a bird in full flight, a symbol of freedom, and silhouetted figures in the right bottom corner. And then when I looked, I got a fright. I remember thinking, oh my goodness, Jean had taken a photograph of somebody being murdered. I thought we were witnessing somebody being drowned, but actually we were witnessing somebody being reborn. And then I drew another sharp intake of breath, but for a completely different reason, because now I worried that I was intruding on a very private moment, because this is a baptism that we're looking at. And it's about cleansing and rejuvenation and purification and washing away sin. And then I realized that actually it's a beautiful moment. I'm just going to read the text that goes with it. Can drowning men still save us? It was a time of racism, xenophobia, and words breathing death. Yet here, this cleansing, this rising up with the sun. And the year is very relevant. It's 2016. 2016, another explosion of xenophobia in South Africa, but actually an explosion of xenophobia all over the world. 2016 was the year of anti-immigrant rhetoric by Donald Trump. It was the ongoing Brexit debacle. It was the Syrian refugee crisis. It was the rise of the alt-right and white nationalism and other ideologies that promote hate. And on a personal level, when I saw this image for the first time, I think I was also drowning in my own turmoil. And this image and the words gave me hope that I will rise up with the sun. And I think that's what this image speaks to me and why I can connect with it so profoundly, because it is about hope. It's about rising up with the sun. And I find it a very inspiring image.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that really beautiful reflection. Thank you. We now move to our third discussant, Ros Fish. Ros is a teacher of history, currently teaching at St. Cyprian's in Cape Town. And Ros knows Jean from way back in the Stellenbosch days, and in fact has provided some really fantastic feedback on the book. So welcome, Ros. I hand over to you.
Thank you so much. So Jean has captured this intriguing woman in the schoolroom on the forgotten fringes of Kampala, waiting defiantly to be noticed. But he also has her connected to those he witnessed, waiting at Chanook Farm in rural KZN, in Bikeke in Timor-Leste, and in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. So she's waiting to speak her lived experience here for all of them. So Jean's 6 words for this image was, so she waited for her turn. And I want to read the piece that he wrote. The men have had so much to say under that tree at Chanook Farm, in that community hall in Bikeke, at that hotel in Port-au-Prince, in the schoolroom, on the forgotten fringes of Kampala. Troubled histories and explanations of how to fix them. tussle, toss, turn in the heat. It takes forever before she raises her hand, longer still before she is noticed. So this poignant image has her not facing us, the viewers, and yet I feel her eye piercing right through me when I look at it. I feel her grimly set determination as she waits to be noticed, to speak her pain that she has not heard addressed by all the men have had to say as they talk of how they would fix their troubled histories. She has not heard those men as they tussle, toss, and turn in the heat address, let alone redress, the depths of dispossession and abuse she has faced. So while these gatherings Jean is capturing so vividly for us here might have spoken to the dislocation and deprival of human rights that the men might have had inflicted on them, they do not for this defiant woman speak to what she knows. I can only imagine. In Vikeke, that might be the starvation, forced sterilization, torture, and sexual slavery inflicted by the Indonesian military forces Jean was speaking about earlier, as they occupied Timor-Leste for almost a quarter of a century, which for those women went way beyond the massacres and destruction left behind by the departing Indonesian military occupiers. In Port-au-Prince, that might be not just their denial of the right by their own husbands to use their hard-won earnings from the produce of the land they had worked for their children and themselves, but also they're being robbed of their homes and left beaten and raped without shelter. In Kampala, where this woman is captured, in Kampala, that might similarly be the exclusion as women from land tenure, where they might have been cultivating as much as 85% of agricultural produce, yet only at one point owning at most 7% of the land. And in Chanook Farm, more locally in rural KZN, it might have been not just their resistance to eviction from their ancestral land that they, as the women, had been cultivating for as long as they could remember, that they would have faced. But also what we know is the gender-based violence inflicted on our women then, as now, as their particularly brutal intersectional form of endless exploitation. So David has said, I'm a history teacher. And as a history teacher, I know that when we are instructed to teach what Jean calls troubled histories, we are not called on to speak of the particular experience of women. Their truth is obscured or marginalized or simply erased. In truth, I found, looking it up, that in 1996, 2 men were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their resistance to the Indonesian military occupation of Timor-Leste. Where is the acclaim for the women of Vikeke, Chanook, Port-au-Prince, Kampala? And this wondrous image Jean has shared with us here is both set in a particular moment in time and place, while also speaking to us beyond that moment and space. What lies behind the infinite depths of lived knowledge I feel in her defiant eye is the multitude of reasons she has for finally raising her hand after listening to the men sounding on seemingly oblivious to her and her lived experience and her truth, and then waiting even longer just to be noticed. Jean does not say she is heard, and in truth, the dominant narratives of these troubled histories is that today still she is not, and the women she waits to speak for are not. So thank you, Jean, thank you, David, for the privilege of being able to respond to this extraordinary image.
Thank you so much, Roz, for that that wonderful, very powerful and challenging reflection. Thanks. Our last discussant is Eric Kimani Gochoka. Eric is a communications specialist, currently working for UN Habitat in Nairobi, where Jean also works. And Eric, I think you have had a bit of a long engagement with this book, because you would go into Jean's office and there were the pictures on the wall in the office. So I'm gonna hand over then to you.
Thank you, David. You can hear me? It's clear right now?
Beautifully clear and beautifully clear.
Thank you very much. I had the privilege of meeting Jean sometime in 2014 when I joined the office. And as David has rightfully stated, I had the privilege of seeing this book still as a PowerPoint and going through the photos. And I really counted myself very honored to have seen that. When I met Jean, I don't know if you can remember, but he was nursing a riding injury. And then I later learned that Jean is the only human being on earth that I know who rides a bicycle more expensive than his car. So that said, I will go ahead and read from page 61, a paragraph on page 61, and then I'll jump and read some 4 paragraphs on page 63. And here I go. I guess for me, it all started at Stellenbosch University, that much vaunted bastion of Afrikaner exceptionalism, which saw fit at the start of my second year of study to ban me from ever publishing on campus again. My sin, involvement in producing a student poetry anthology called Feel Free, which had just been banned for possession by the South African government. It was here that my eyes and mind were prized open by the teaching of 3 exceptional political philosophy lecturers, by my discovery of the writings of John Berger and the photographs of Jean Moore, by news of the events of the time, our country in flames, military troops in the townships, death squads, killings of political activists, and the burning of Crossroads, its smoke visible for days from the university campus. Page 63. At that moment, I remembered her. Of all the encounters on my journey, this one was perhaps most completely beyond the frame. In a remote village whose name I cannot remember, at the end of another steep and broken road in the eastern shadows of the Drakensberg, in a setting where my camera would not dare to point, we sat in a circle under a tree. Our task was to learn the practice of participatory rural appraisal, another great idea soon to be corrupted by jargon, acronym, and PowerPoint. She had a memory of things beyond imagining. On instruction of the chief, she indulged us, telling the story. Her younger companions in attendance, getting up in turns to represent its highlights and landmarks with the help of drawings adorned with sticks, beads, and pebbles. All spoke in Zulu, and I relied on the illustrations and some translation. She told of days before human history, of times of laughter and bumper harvests, of rinderpest and war, of huge herds and wedding feasts. Our exercise was proceeding perfectly, a beautiful timeline unfolding in the sand. We were participating and appraising. When we reached the year 1956, the process stalled. She told us police had come, accusing the villagers of growing dara. They started burning the fields. The young men fought back, leaving policemen and villagers dead. More than 20 men were arrested, taken to Pretoria and hanged. She stopped talking. No one volunteered to draw. Silence. Then she turned to me and said, "They looked like you, those men who dropped fire on our fields from the sky and took our sons away. You can draw for us here in the sand. What happened to them?" There in Pretoria. When I read this text, Jean starts off as a pro-freedom activist at the university with the production of a seditious publication, Feel Free. Then many years later, while working, one unnamed woman with super memory heaps all the sins of his ancestors on his shoulders. You'll remember that he told us he was born in 1961, yet this was 1956, before he was even born. So Jean, this woman hands you a large live grenade with a pin removed. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm just curious to just know how you handle this sticky situation then, and how this event shaped who you are today. That's it. Thank you.
Eric, thanks for that beautiful selection from the last part of the book, and the big questions that it throws up for all of us, and thanks so much for that, and also a big thanks for that excellent account of the local word dacha. You really are getting there, Eric. Not quite, but that was great. Thanks very much. And before we leave, just our four discussants, Jean, Eric threw a question out to you, and maybe you want to pick that up before I move to wrap up.
Thanks, David. You can hear me, yes?
Perfectly.
Good. Well, in fact, I think if I remember correctly, there was basically the question was, how were they executed? Because it was a very painful story that was told. And subsequently, there was a play actually of this event that I looked up, but it's not really well written up. And maybe Rose can get some of her students to research this. But the issue was, the question that sort of arose out of this exchange was, how were they executed? You know, because we were outsiders coming in. The chief had told the people to cooperate with us. There was a big group of us. I was one of the few people with a white skin, but there was a big group of us outsiders. They were laying bare their story in the sand for us. And I mean, there may be photographs still of what was on the ground there. I may have them. I must look. But the issue was, so the exercise was illustrate on the ground the rinderpest and this, you know, rinderpest, you draw a sick cow, for example, and so on. And it was really beautiful. And then the question was, so how were they executed? How are you going to depict this thing? And that is when she turned to me, because it was white soldiers who came in helicopters at that point, or white police, and landed and did what they did to these dacha fields. And I then had to explain what I was doing there. The whole participatory exercise was turned on me. And I think, Zubaida, I left it for now because that was one of the big life lessons for me. It was profoundly moving that she turned the whole methodology, because I had seen furtive eyes looking in my direction as the only white person in that little circle, because what we were doing was happening in a few other places. We were all practicing this method. But she took the whole process and then turned the process on me and said, you explain why you are here. That's what I heard, actually. And then I explained, and I got lucky because I could say, well, I was not a soldier, because they called the police soldiers, right? I did not do military service. I'm not wonderful, but at least you don't have that one on me, you know? And it broke the tension. There was real tension, but it was a positive tension. And when the whole conversation was finished, a young man got up, went to draw, and he drew a scaffolding with a hangman's noose, no problem. And we carried on. So that was the outcome, actually, of it. And tension was broken, but it was a real moment for me where and there isn't really a photograph of that, and that's why it's in the text at the end. And I just want to say that there's not a photograph for everything that one wants to say, you know. And so I do a little exercise when I sometimes talk to people about this, where I say there's some words waiting for pictures and there's some pictures waiting for words. And this is one of the ones where there are words waiting for a picture because there isn't. And so I was not chased out of the village. They tolerated us, but it was also clear that they were doing this thing with us on the chief's instruction. It was for us again. We were the outsiders coming in, and we had an expert from India teaching us rapid rural appraisal methodologies, and it was happening for us, not for them. That place did not benefit at all from our visit there. And that was one of the big life lessons for me in terms of the work we were doing. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Jean. And thanks so much to all of our 4 discussants for those wonderful readings and insights. And I think there's wonderfully rich stuff there in every one of those contributions to ponder. And I think they shine perspective and new meaning on Jean's creation and remind us that one of those really beautiful things about books is that they in fact have a meaning and a significance beyond, in fact, the author's intention, and they generate community and conversation, and I think that's a very beautiful thing that you've achieved, Jean. I want to conclude by reading a last poem, a long-time personal favorite. Even after Matanzima's tractors had gone. In a place called Mvenyani, I took a photo of a young boy leading cattle, plowing deep, rough furrows. It was a fine image, printed in the milk room. In those days, on principle, I would take copies to people I'd photographed. It took a full day's walking, the print my only map. There, I took another photo, a grandfather staring at the picture of the boy in fading light. As I did, I realized this might take my entire life. And in many ways, I have ever since been walking up and down that Mvenyani mountain. A personal favorite, which I think captures Jean's inherent respect for people and his commitment to do the right thing way beyond what can be reasonably expected, or most of us would think our obligation or duty is. And I love that last line. And in many ways, I have ever since been walking up and down that Mvenyani mountain, both because it captures the human condition more broadly, and I think encapsulates so many of the themes in the book, as well as, this is an additional point I just wanted to make, as well as being an appropriate moment just to remind us of another one of Jean's projects, the Blocktober project. And Jean has ridden from his house up to the King's Blockhouse in what he calls a slow burn solidarity with survivors of gender-based violence. He did this for 200 days until that big Cape Town fire not so long ago interrupted this, but where he has continued that long daily ride since on other routes. And I think that this picture always pulls these different things together in this very powerful way. So thank you, Jean, lastly, for the book. I think I speak on behalf of everyone who has it, and for the solidarity, the compassion, the respect of others that it represents. And certainly for me, you've always showed how to be a decent and wondrous human being, and thank you for that. After today's proceedings, if you haven't already got the book, you I'm sure want to get the book, or you may want to get more copies of the book for others. And in a moment, we're going to just put up a screen that tells you where it is available from. There are a few routes. There's the book lounge, in Cape Town, and you can order that online as well, and they'll they will arrange the delivery. You can order it through the Commune bookstore in Joburg, and there's the address there. And lastly, you can order it directly by sending an email to The Lonely Staircase, which is the publishing company that doesn't have a legal form that emerged, so that there would be a beautiful logo on this book that you see there at the moment. The cost of the book is 275 Rand. If you order it from The Lonely Staircase, 50 Rand of that price, the part that's not going to the bookseller, in fact, will go to the Saki Bartman Center for Women and Children, which is a one-stop center for women and children who are survivors of abuse, located in Manenberg here in Cape Town. So that's where you get it. Before just a final conclusion, Jean, anything that you want to add?
David, no, I've said enough. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. I've felt very connected with you all. I've engaged with many of you in the last number of weeks. I am planning to see Zubaida in person, even if no, I'm not going to say that. But thank you very much, everybody. It's been absolutely wonderful being able to present it to you, and I hope we can stay in touch. That's all from me, David.
Thanks, and then just to say on conclusion from my side, thank you to our wonderful interviewer and our wonderful discussants. Thank you to all the many people who've contributed to the making of this book and to this launch, particularly if I can acknowledge Jean du Plessis, the behind-the-scenes organization. Thank you, Anna. And lastly, to thank all of you who've taken the time out to join us and make this launch so very special. So big thanks to all. Keep well. Stay safe in these challenging times, and take care. Good night. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Goodbye all. Thank you and well done.
Bye all. Hi, Mike. Bye. Okay.